WNYC-TV presents About the Arts with Barbara Lee Diamonstein.
Welcome to About the Arts. I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein, and our guests are Richard Roud, the director of the New York Film Festival, and Wim Wenders, German director of An American Friend, one of the films shown at this year's film festival. Richard Roud, you've been the guiding spirit of the film festival for the 15 years that it's been going on. Somehow this year seems to be a particularly successful festival. How does it compare to other years, and how do you explain it?
Well, I think it is a better festival than the past couple of years. Largely a question of chance, and then, we don't make the films ourselves, we have to find them. And it seems to have worked out that there's a particularly good selection of films available this year. I think a particularly varied selection. I think that's what has made people more interested in that, is that the selection is more varied than usual. But I don't know. I don't.
When you say more varied, what does that mean? How do you make your selections, and by what standards?
By high standards.
High standards.
Oh, we know that.
But that's not a good enough answer. No, what I meant by varied, to finish that first of all, is that of the 21 programs, there are 9 by directors who've never been in the festival before, and that adds an element of excitement, of something new. Some years there have been mostly repeaters, shall we say, people whose films have been in before, which is there's nothing wrong with that as far as I can see, but people do like to see change. How we choose the films, what are our standards? Well, they're very hard to put down in words. There's a program committee.
Who's the program committee?
Charles Michener, Susan Sontag, Richard Corliss, Roger Greenspun, and myself.
All distinguished authorities?
Yes. I think what we try to do is look for, I suppose the only word is excellence, because that's only begging the question, it isn't really explaining. Films of no matter what type they may be, which are extremely good of their kind, either films which say something that hasn't been said or say it in a different way, films by younger and promising, exciting directors, also films by directors who are no longer promising, like Buñuel, who's 77 years old this year, who maintained their standards, and it's very hard really to say what it is, but we don't look for any one thing. I think we see each film as it comes along and take it on its own terms, providing the terms it sets itself are reasonably high. If it succeeds on its own terms, then we take it.
Obviously, you have preferences like everyone else, and there are the works of some directors that you especially respond to.
Yes, but we don't systematically show all of the films by a director that we happen to like, although many people think we do. Certain directors' works appear quite regularly, but people never seem to realize that there are other films by these directors which don't appear. They don't notice the fact that they're not there, of course.
Well, let's talk about one of the repeaters, and I'm talking about the man on your right, Wim Wenders.
Well, he's a real repeater.
Yes.
Well, let's speak. If we leave out Summer in the Cities, which I've still not seen actually. The first film by Wenders, which was shown in the program we do, not the festival, but the Film Society of Lincoln Center and the Museum of Modern Art does a thing every year called New Directors, New Films.
Is that 71?
72. And the first year was Wenders, I think you consider that your first film, or do you not? The Goalie's Anxiety at the Penalty Kick. But we haven't shown all of his films. We haven't shown The Scarlet Letter. We haven't shown False Movement. But because there has been a Wenders film, 72, 74, 76, and 77, people think, he's a festival favorite, you show every one of his films, just because he's Wim Wenders and because he's your pet. And this isn't quite true, because The Scarlet Letter and False Movement were films, I suppose, that we could have shown, but
you didn't. Why did you?
Well, because we didn't think they were as good as the other ones, quite frankly.
Well, there's much talk about your current film. In fact, it's referred to as your breakthrough film, and I'm talking about The American Friend. Why don't we start with its title? So many of your works have an American setting, or seem so influenced by America. Why don't we talk about the title for a moment? Is that a metaphor? Does it have an existential meaning? What does that title mean?
Well, there are a couple of ways you could understand it, and it's ironic in a way, and it's a little bit metaphorical as well, because it's a friendship between an American and a European, an American adventurer and a European craftsman, an adventurer and a very honest man. So it's a funny kind of friendship. So the title "The American Friend" is a little bit ambiguous.
The American friend is a rather corrupting influence.
Exactly. That's what you might hear in it. And the film is about corruption, and well, I wouldn't necessarily call corruption what America did to Europe, but there are other words for that. I mean, you can call it colonization just as well, or whatever.
So it's really about history as well.
Yes, it is.
Word has it that your film had a different ending, and that you found the first ending unsatisfactory. Is that so, and why did you change it?
No, the book had a completely different ending, with even more violence and more blood and more killings than it has already. And I just didn't know how to not lose control of things, and finally found a point in the story where it could just as well end before the new escalation of violence. And well, I think it's even a better ending than in the book. And I talked to Patricia Highsmith, the author. She's American.
The film is based on a book that Patricia Highsmith wrote. How did she feel about your ending? It was very true to the character.
It was, yeah, and she...
Yours, I mean.
Yeah, and she agreed to me that it was a good ending. And I mean, she didn't say that hers was bad, but she said that she thought it quite... well, it made sense. And I think that she got a little bit lost in the story in the end, and just didn't find her way out, and so had to kill everybody that was left.
Well, thriller writers oftentimes have this problem. There are those stories about Raymond Chandler being phoned by Howard Hawks when making The Big Sleep, asking whatever did happen to this character, who killed him, and Chandler says, I don't know.
Chandler wrote, by the way, the script based on Strangers on a Train, another novel by Patricia Highsmith that Alfred Hitchcock took about 15 years ago, wasn't that? Yeah.
So much of your work does seem influenced by American filmmakers, including Hitchcock. Who did help shape your vision?
Well, 2 or 3 American directors, more than other ones. One you can see in the film is Nicholas Ray.
You might explain why one can see in the film Nicholas Ray. You certainly have a device that some people found interesting, and I assume some disconcerting. But what was the purpose, that sub-theme of 4 very distinguished directors playing roles in the film? 2 American and 2 French, is that correct?
Well, there are a couple of more directors. I think in the end there are 8 or 9 directors playing bigger or smaller parts in the film. Dennis Hopper and Gerard Blanc, they play lead parts.
Yes.
Nicholas Ray has a quite a big part as well, Samuel Fuller. And then there are a couple of friends of mine like Jean Eustache, a French director, or Daniel Schmidt, a Swiss director.
Is that a metaphor also?
No, it was in fact, there was a problem with casting all the crooks in the film, and which I hadn't done before. And
I'll restrain myself.
thinking of what crooks I knew it all.
Well, you've said.
Only directors came to my mind. Well, they're real crooks. I mean, they're torture people, and they impose themselves on the actors, well, on everybody. And
You look very benign.
I'm told to be. But on the other hand, I mean, every director, as soon as you start making a film, you really have to fight, and to, I mean, even hurt. And even if I do have a renown of being gentle, I mean, I know that I hurt a lot of people shooting The American Friend. So directors are, well, they're very close to the mafia. I mean, they kill people as well. Samuel Fuller, for instance, he killed, did you know that? He killed 2 or 3 stuntmen during the shooting of his films. Well, that's...
Are there any
not
other
that
American
friendly.
directors whose work you've been influenced by, who shaped your vision?
Yes, a lot by John Ford, and as well by Anthony Mann, who seems to me a very underrated American director. He seems to be just one who belongs to the industry, but he really isn't. I could name a couple of more, but these are my heroes.
Mr. Raud, how do you compare the work of Mr. Wenders and some of his German compatriots, I'm thinking of Fassbinder and Herzog, to what I guess we would call younger American directors? I'm thinking of a younger Coppola, Lucas,
Well, I think
an earlier Altman.
the younger German directors, I think, are more interested in questions of form and visual style than some of the younger American directors are. Everybody always asks, what do Herzog, Wenders, and Fassbinder have in common? And of course, at first glance, the answer is nothing. If you ask them, each of them, they'll say, no, we have nothing in common with it. We just happen to be German, we happen to be directors. But I finally found something that links you all.
Tell me.
The thing that seems to link Herzog, Wenders, and Fassbinder is a reaction against what I take to be German intolerance of any form of eccentricity, of any form of divergence, of any form of dissent, of any form of non-conformity. From my experience, Germany today, conforming to do what you're supposed to do, to think what you're supposed to think, to work the way you're supposed to work, is really the highest virtue. And all 3 directors seem to me to be very much against this, each in different ways. Each in his own way has tried to express the fact that conforming to society isn't the only virtue there is, and that there are nonconformism. Dissent is something that is very important. I don't know what you think about this.
Sounds like a very loose bond.
It's a loose bond, yes.
But it's one that you share.
Yeah, all right. It's
Well, you may
sounds
also
like a
share
fine.
another one, and that is an interest in America. How do you explain that?
well, you're referring to Werner Herzog's last film.
And I'm
Squash
also
Actor.
thinking of Mr. Fassbinder's
Fassbinder.
decision to relocate here.
Yeah.
Well, they were all born in America, really, weren't they?
I mean, well,
In a sense.
Is that the way you see it?
post-war Germany is maybe more Midwest than, more America than New York. Yeah.
I mean, you were all born after the war, and then, I don't know, some may have been born in the British zone or the American zone, but they were born in a
You were born in 45.
I was born in 45. Yeah.
in a colonized country. I mean, an occupied country, first of all, and after being occupied, then colonized.
Well,
Have
but
you
on
ever
the other hand,
consi-
America has been paradise for any film director since films are being made. I mean, even in the 20s, German film directors like Lubitsch went to America just for better conditions to work. Yeah.
Have you ever considered coming to Paradise on a more permanent basis? Have you ever considered relocating here yourself?
Well, I consider that already quite often, and I might do so, but right now I think it's not a good time to do that, because right now it would look like leaving Germany. Well, of course you can only go somewhere else if you leave some other place, but
Would it ever look any different if you leave a place?
well, right now I wouldn't like to look like leaving Germany. I think it's not a good time to leave.
Because of the success of your film, or
No,
the
not at all.
political climate in Germany? or-
Yes, of course, because of the political climate, where leaving now might look like not wanting to take any responsibilities, or like not wanting to fight or whatever. I mean, there are a lot of over exaggerations going on, like Germany being already on the what do you call it?
Brink.
On the brink of going fascist again, which is really not true, not at all. But there is a certain recession going on, and I think it wouldn't help anybody if more people like Fassbinder's doing were leaving now, and it wouldn't help. It certainly would not help a new direction of filmmakers who are just trying to make the first or second film.
Do you see a strong political cast to your work? Did you work
Not an-
together, all of you, in a collective or a cell at one time?
Yes, we still do.
How does that operate?
Not production-wise. We do have our own distribution company for 7 years now, which is a rather unique example of solidarity or collective work. And well, it's really unique. I mean, nowhere in any other country of the world you find a distribution company belonging to only directors, and it is the only independent German distribution company left at all. And what you call the new German cinema certainly would not have been possible without our company.
Well, there is a great deal of attention paid to the new German cinema. There are some that say there is no avant-garde that exists in cinema now, that there is only a perfection of work, but really no stylistic breakthroughs. Would you agree with that view, Mr. Roud?
Well, up to a point, I think. I mean, you can't have a renaissance every decade. I think the period between 1959 and 1972, or the 60s, in fact, was perhaps one of the great decades of filmmaking.
Internationally?
Internationally, except perhaps in America. It only began later on. But in France, certainly, and in Germany. And I think it's true that since '72, there haven't been any great new directors who have suddenly appeared on the horizon. In fact, Wim is the last one I can think of that I know about. But I mean, there was this great 10, 12-year period. I think we're perhaps a little bit in a holding position, or in either a holding position or a trough, or a reformation, or a consolidation period. Call it what you like. But it's true that there isn't, since '72, there haven't been, I don't think, any really exciting new talents to appear.
Is that the way you see it from your vantage point?
Not really, no. I would include a couple of other people.
For example?
Yes. Huh?
For example, well, didn't you include Rainer or Werner?
Oh, I called it long before '72.
Yeah.
I mean,
Already?
Signs of Life we showed in *68.
Okay, that's
Perhaps you should share with all of us your secret. Who are the two people we're including?
Werner Herzog and Rainer Maria Fassbinder. But I mean, when I say '72, I'm just speaking personally. That was the year I saw Wim's film, but I'd seen Herzog films before then, and Fassbinder films before then, so I count them as being before you, even though things came out differently.
You mentioned several sentences back that there was great development going on, except in the American film, and except now in the past several years, it seems that the American film has finally matured.
Oh, right. Well, that was at the early 60s, and throughout the 60s you had this thing going on in France and in Germany, and the American developments really came late 60s and early 70s. You had Terrence Malick, you had Martin Scorsese and Coppola, and the development of Altman. I mean, of course, Altman had been around longer than that, but I mean, sort of really getting underway. It just happened a little bit later, that's all. There is one exception. Yes, there's maybe one exception. There's a film in this year's festival by a young man called Martin Brest, an American, who made a film in Los Angeles for the American Film Institute on a grant of $20,000. And I think he is, I mean, it's only the first film. It's 72 minutes long, so it's not...
For $20,000?
Yes. With help from his friends, of course, naturally. It's black and white, which makes it a bit cheap, makes it cheaper. And maybe he is the first one.
What's the film about? What's it entitled?
It's got a great title, which is difficult to explain. It's called Hot Tomorrows.
Perhaps you shouldn't explain it. It's a terrific title.
It's a good title.
What is it about?
Los Angeles and death. Not perhaps the most on-turning of topics, but it's really very extraordinary. I think everybody should see.
Have you seen it, Vim?
No, but Los Angeles and death seems interesting to me.
Well, the print on it just arrived in New York with its director 2 days ago, so we saw a rough cut, but the final print has not been shown yet.
If American films have matured, it seems to me that Italian films are aging, and that more and more the Swiss and the Germans constitute, if there is an avant-garde in filmmaking, it is they. How do you feel about that?
I agree.
What's happened to the Italian filmmakers?
Of course, some of them have died. Pasolini is dead, Rossellini is dead, Visconti is dead. Bellocchio, who seemed to be very promising, seems to have gone up a lot of blind alleys and doing projects he doesn't really want to do, but has to do something. There's Bertolucci still, of course.
The Tavianis.
The Taviani brothers, why? Yes, the Taviani brothers.
They have a film in the festival,
Yes, they
don't
do.
they? And what is that called?
It's called Padre Padrone, my father, my master. The words, I mean, it's about problems of the patriarchal father, and of course it sounds even better in Italian because the word for father and the word for boss are practically the same. Father is padre and boss is padrone, so the connection between the two is even more strongly.
Language isn't accidental.
No, language is never accidental.
Is much of your work done for television? Somehow I have the idea, Mr. Wenders, that a great deal of financing for films in Germany comes from television sources. How does that affect the content and the direction of your work?
Well, in fact, all of my films, as well as all of the other German directors' films that you might see here, are co-produced at least with television money. More or less, I made, for instance, for The American Friend, I made a television pre-sale that is about 15% of the whole.
So they gave you startup money.
Yeah. Of the whole amount I needed for the film, so it's not that much, 15%. But still there is some television money in it. In the previous films there was more, up to 50 or 60% even. But, well, the films aren't, that doesn't say that the films are television films at all. I mean, they were made to be shown for 3 years in theaters before being seen on television. And none of the shots in The American Friend or in any other of my films was done with television screen in mind. So.
And how much do they intrude on the
not at all.
Content or direction?
Not at all.
You have carte blanche?
Yes, I wouldn't. Yes, I do. And I would really renounce on television money if I had to stick to close-ups or if they would interfere in any way with the script or whatever.
Well, there are other external factors that I assume intrude on the life of a director. While I was viewing The American Friend, a film that I admired, so much of it seemed to have been shot out of doors. How much does the weather become the director? How much does the script evolve in terms of the out of doors?
Well, it's not only the weather. I mean, the weather was very important for the shooting of The American Friend, and it's we shot 16 weeks instead of 9 that we hoped to do. So, and much of it was due to the weather. But the actors just as well. Dennis, for a big part, changed the script. The locations where we're shooting changed the script.
The
Everybody
colors
involved.
of the skies were incredible and painterly,
Yes.
of course.
Yes, we helped a little bit.
I assumed as much. How do you do that?
Well, that's one of the simplest thing you can do. I mean, we just put a filter in front of the lens and cut it according to the skyline. For instance, the shot where the sky is red in Paris. That's one of the cheap tricks.
What does it mean for a film to be included in the festival?
Well, it's not for me to say, but I think it can help. It has helped many films to get distribution that didn't have it, and also can give it perhaps a better launching pad, even if it does have a distributor. But there have been many films that have been in the New York Film Festival that had no distribution in sight, and their presence or their reception at the festival, it gives distributors the chance to see a film with a New York audience and to see how they react, to see how the press will react. And it's not quite the same as showing a film to somebody in a screening room in Europe or even sending a print over. They can see it, they can and do see it with an audience, and that does help them sometimes to decide whether they want to buy the film or not.
We only have a few remaining moments.
Yeah.
Perhaps you'd like to comment what
Yeah.
it's meant to your career to be included, not once, but often, in the film festival, especially the New York Film Festival.
It meant a lot, and the continuity in New York meant a lot to me, and the fact that The American Friend may be in a way a commercial film in New York now, certainly due to the film festival. On the other hand, I'm afraid, there is a certain danger that being shown at the festival gives a film an aura of an art film.
What
or
a way
whatever.
to suffer. That's the price of success. In the remaining several seconds, I want to ask Richard Roud a question. You spend so much of your time in Europe that you are almost uniquely qualified to evaluate the world scene in films in the 30 seconds that remain.
Yes.
What is the emerging direction? Filmmakers, where are we going in films?
And we only have
Less
30
violence,
seconds.
more?
Less violence, certainly. Otherwise, I really don't know. I haven't got an answer for you.
But you have lots of answers for the people in New York. Richard Roud, the guiding spirit of the New York Film Festival, Wim Wenders, the director of The American Friend. Thank you both for being with us. I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein, and thank you, audience, for being with us, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.